The moment I realized my parents might have hidden something about my birth started with a document I was never supposed to see. It was not dramatic. There was no argument, no confrontation, just a quiet afternoon while I was helping my mother organize old paperwork. Inside one folder, I noticed a certificate with my name on it. At first it looked like a normal birth document, but one detail did not make sense. The date on the hospital record was 3 weeks later than the birthday my family had celebrated every year. And suddenly, one simple question appeared in my mind. Why would my own birth certificate show a different date? My name is Daniel. I am 25 years old, and until 2 years ago, I believed my family history was completely straightforward. My parents, Michael and Sarah, had always been supportive and stable. My father worked as an engineer. My mother worked as a teacher. They were the kind of parents who attended school events, remembered birthdays, and asked about homework every evening. Growing up, nothing ever suggested there was a secret connected to my birth. My childhood felt normal. Family dinners, weekend trips, holiday gatherings with relatives. There was nothing unusual about the way my parents treated me. Because of that, the document I discovered during that afternoon felt confusing rather than suspicious. When I first saw the date difference, I assumed it was simply a clerical error. Maybe the hospital printed the document incorrectly. But curiosity has a strange way of growing quietly. And once a question appears, it can be difficult to ignore. Later that evening, I casually asked my mother about it. She looked surprised for a moment. Then she smiled and said something that sounded simple. "Oh, that must be a paperwork mistake from the hospital." Her explanation sounded reasonable, but something about the way she answered felt slightly tense. Not obvious, just subtle. A small pause before speaking. At the time I told myself I was imagining things, but the question did not disappear. Over the next few weeks, the thought returned to my mind several times. Eventually, curiosity pushed me to look more carefully at the document again. This time I noticed another detail. The hospital listed on the certificate was located in a different city, about 2 hours away from where my parents lived at the time. That discovery raised another question. Why would my parents travel to another city for my birth? When I mentioned that detail during dinner one evening, both of my parents became quiet. My father answered the question. "We had relatives nearby," he said. But his explanation sounded vague. Because I knew most of our extended family lived much closer to our hometown. The conversation ended quickly. However, the tension in the room stayed with me. Later that week, I called my Aunt Laura. She was my mother's older sister and often shared stories about our family history. During our conversation, I mentioned the hospital name casually. Her response surprised me. "I thought you were born here," she said. That sentence changed everything. Because it meant something about my birth story did not match the memories of other family members. From that moment forward, curiosity slowly turned into determination. I needed to understand the truth. One evening, I visited my parents again and asked directly, "Why does my birth certificate list a hospital in another city?" My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at the table. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then my father said something carefully measured. "Daniel, some family stories are more complicated than they appear." The way he said those words made my heart beat faster. Because suddenly, I knew there was something they had never told me. The truth finally came out during a long conversation that lasted nearly 3 hours. My parents explained that the day I was born had been extremely complicated. Before I was born, My mother experienced serious medical complications late in pregnancy. Her doctors decided she needed to be transferred to a larger hospital with specialized care. That hospital happened to be located in the other city. The transfer happened quickly, and during those stressful hours, my parents were forced to make several difficult decisions. But that was not the only secret. My father continued speaking slowly. "There is another part of the story we never told you," he said. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Then she explained something that completely changed the story I thought I knew. During the emergency delivery, doctors believed my chances of survival were extremely low. For several weeks after my birth, I remained in intensive medical care. Those weeks were filled with uncertainty. My parents did not know if I would survive. Because of that, they chose not to share many details about the situation with extended family. They simply told everyone I had been born safely and that we were resting at home. The date they shared with relatives eventually became the birthday everyone remembered. Over time, the complicated details of those first weeks faded into silence. My parents believed protecting me from that difficult story would make my childhood easier. But the truth never disappeared. It simply waited quietly in those documents until I discovered it years later. After hearing the full story, I understood why my parents struggled to explain it. For them, those early weeks were filled with fear. They were not hiding the truth out of deception. They were protecting memories that had been extremely painful. Learning the full story changed the way I saw my family. Instead of feeling betrayed, I felt something else entirely: gratitude. Because the people who had raised me were also the people who had spent sleepless nights hoping I would survive. Sometimes family secrets are not created to deceive. Sometimes they are created to protect fragile memories. And sometimes discovering those secrets helps us understand how deeply our families care about us. Family histories are rarely as simple as they seem. Sometimes the stories we grow up believing are only part of a much larger picture. If you discovered something unexpected about your own birth or family history, how do you think you would react? Would you feel angry about the secret, or grateful for the truth once you understood the reason behind it? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional stories about family mysteries, hidden truths, and life-changing discoveries, subscribe to the channel, because the next story might reveal something even more surprising.